Welcome to Japanese Sleep Whispers, your sanctuary for peaceful nights and gentle dreams. Here, you will find calming bedtime stories inspired by the timeless beauty and traditions of Japan. Each story is read slowly in a soothing voice, accompanied by natural sounds such as flowing rivers and the tranquil rhythm of shishi-odoshi. Whether you seek relaxation, relief from stress, or help falling asleep, these tales invite you to drift away into a world of serenity. Imagine quiet temples, moonlit gardens, and the whispering bamboo forests as you listen. If you'd like these soothing stories to be part of your nightly routine, consider subscribing so they're always with you when you need them. Subscribe and let these stories be your nightly ritual of calm and rest. Thank you for being here. May you always find peace in every moment. By the hearth on a winter night. Prologue. Snow begins to fall. The first snow came quietly, as if the world had been holding its breath. At first, it was only a fine dust, drifting through the darkness like forgotten whispers. Then, as the wind softened, the flakes grew larger, round, soft, shimmering faintly in the glow of the paper lantern that hung above the gate. A lone figure made his way up the narrow mountain path, boots sinking into the half-frozen earth. Each step gave a muffled sound, half crunch, half sigh. He walked slowly, not from fatigue, but from a kind of reverence. The world had changed its color, and he did not wish to disturb it. The man's name was Ren. He carried a small pack, a lantern, and the faint scent of city rain. He had left behind the lights and noise of the town earlier that afternoon, taking the winding train through valleys now buried in fog, then walking the rest of the way on foot back to the village, where his grandmother once lived, where the old house still waited at the edge of the cedar forest. When he reached the crest of the path, he stopped. Below him, the valley lay wrapped in white, the river tracing a thin dark line through the snow. Lanterns glowed faintly from scattered houses. Smoke rose in slow curls from chimneys, dissolving into the dim sky. Ren drew a breath. The air was sharp and clean, cutting, yet strangely sweet. It smelled of pine, smoke, and something faintly metallic, the scent of snow itself. He lifted his lantern higher, its light swaying over the path ahead. The house was closed now. He could see the faint outline of the tiled roof beyond the trees, the same roof that had sheltered him as a child. The gate creaked softly when he pushed it open. The wood was cold under his fingers, rough with age. Beyond the gate lay the small garden, its stones and moss hidden under a soft white blanket. The pond was frozen at the edges, its center still black and faintly rippling in the wind. He crossed the garden and slid the door open. It gave a long, low sigh, the sound of a house remembering. Inside, the air was still. Cold, but not empty. The faint scent of tatami rose from the floor, mingled with the distant sweetness of burnt cedar and ash. Ren set his pack down and crouched by the hearth. The ashes were gray and soft, but beneath them, a faint orange glow still pulsed like a heartbeat. He smiled. The caretaker must have lit it that morning, knowing he would arrive. He added a few pieces of kindling, then a log, and blew gently. The flame stirred, reached upward, and bloomed into warmth. The sound of crackling wood filled the room. It was a small sound, yet it filled every corner of the house, the beams, the sliding doors, the memories sleeping in the walls. Ren sat back, watching the flames twist and dance. Shadows flickered along the wooden beams like slow, gentle breaths. He remembered winters long ago, when his grandmother would sit just there, tending the fire while snow fell outside. She would hum quietly, a song without words, her voice blending with the rhythm of the flames. He could almost hear it now, just beneath the crackling. Outside, the snow thickened. It fell past the window in silent streams, veiling the world in softness. The sound of the wind grew fainter, muffled by the weight of the flakes. Ren rose and slid the shoji shut, leaving a small gap through which the firelight glowed faintly against the paper. He poured water into the iron kettle above the hearth, its black surface already gathering condensation. Soon, a thin trail of steam rose, curling upward like a ghost's sigh. He leaned back, resting his head against the wooden post. The warmth seeped into his palms, into his chest. His heartbeat slowed. There was something about firelight that blurred the edges of thought. It melted memory and silence into the same slow rhythm. He could hear faint creaks as the house settled, old wood expanding and contracting in the heat. Outside, the snow whispered against the eaves. Inside, the fire whispered back. He closed his eyes. The room around him began to dissolve, its edges softening, the sounds blending into one another. For a moment, he thought he heard another sound, a voice, perhaps, soft and far away. It could have been the wind slipping through the cracks. It could have been memory. "You've come back, haven't you?" The words, if they were words, were barely more than breath. Ren opened his eyes. The hearth glowed steadily. The shadows moved, but only as shadows do. He smiled faintly, uncertain if he had dreamed. Outside, the snow continued to fall. Flake after flake, endlessly, each one a tiny silence descending from the heavens. He poured himself tea, the green liquid shimmering in the firelight. The first sip was bitter, then warm. It spread through his chest like the memory of an embrace. He exhaled slowly. The storm had reached its heart. Now the world beyond the walls was completely white. The mountains, the river, even the moonlight had vanished. Only the steady glow of the fire remained, and the quiet, unhurried rhythm of the snow. Ren thought of his grandmother again. The way her hands had moved, the sound of her laughter, the faint clink of porcelain cups. He could almost see her sitting across from him now, her eyes half closed, smiling without words. The house no longer felt empty. The kettle began to sing, a high, delicate sound like wind through bamboo. He lifted it from the hook and poured more tea, the steam rising between him and the fire. Time passed gently. The flame shrank, then grew, then shrank again, keeping time with the snow outside. At last, Ren rose, spread a futon near the hearth, and lay down. The fire cast its last warmth across his face. The air smelled faintly of cedar smoke and tea leaves. The last thing he heard before sleep claimed him was the soft hiss of snow against the roof, and beneath it, something quieter still, a lullaby the house itself seemed to hum. Chapter 1: The Old House and the Crackle of Fire. Morning came slowly in the mountains. The snow outside had not stopped, but its fall had softened. Now it moved almost lazily, drifting through the still air like white ash from a distant fire. Inside the house, Ren stirred awake. The fire had burned low during the night, but a few red coals still glowed beneath the gray ash. They pulsed faintly, like sleeping embers of a dream. He sat up, wrapped his blanket tighter around his shoulders, and listened. The world was quiet in a way only deep winter could be. No birds, no running water, not even the sigh of wind through the trees. Only the faint, almost imperceptible sound of snowflakes touching the roof. He rose and added more wood to the hearth. The logs hissed softly as the frost upon them melted away, then crackled, giving off a small burst of sparks. The room filled with the smell of smoke and cedar. Ren watched the flame climb, finding its rhythm again. He could never quite explain why fire held him so completely. It was alive, yet ancient, its movements unpredictable, but always speaking the same quiet language. He poured tea from the leftover pot, cold but comforting. The taste was faintly metallic, like snow on the tongue. When he opened the shoji, the garden outside was completely buried. The old persimmon tree bent slightly under the weight of snow, its branches black against the white. Bamboo leaves drooped low, gathering frost. The pond was frozen solid now, the reflections of the world caught beneath a thin veil of ice. Ren breathed out. His breath became mist, dissolving almost at once. He stepped back inside and sat near the fire again. The warmth began to sink into him slowly, spreading from his palms to his chest. The wood popped, releasing small bursts of sound that seemed to echo in the silence like words half remembered. There was something about this house that made silence feel alive. The beams creaked occasionally, the paper doors shivered with the faintest movements of air, and the old clock in the next room gave a single, soft tick now and then, like the heartbeat of the place itself. He remembered being a child here, running through these rooms barefoot, chasing the orange cat that used to nap by the hearth. He remembered his grandmother's voice, telling him to slow down, her tone more amused than stern. Her hands, always warm, always smelling faintly of smoke and rice straw. He looked at those same hands, now his own. The shape was similar, the skin rougher. He smiled faintly, and the firelight caught in his eyes like the reflection of memory itself. After a while, he went to the back room, where an old chest stood against the wall. Its lacquer was worn, the handles cold to the touch. Inside were things untouched for years: a winter kimono wrapped in paper, a few hand-sewn dolls, a tin box of letters bound with string. Ren opened the tin carefully. The air inside smelled faintly of ink and time. The letters were written in his grandmother's delicate handwriting, the paper yellowed and soft. He did not read them right away. He only traced the lines with his fingers, as if the words themselves might rise like warmth through the page. Outside, the light had changed. The snow had paused, and through the pale clouds, a thin beam of sun found its way through the shoji. It fell across the tatami, a soft rectangle of gold. Dust motes drifted within it, moving slowly, lazily, like thoughts too gentle to disturb. Ren sat back by the hearth. The fire had grown strong again, its voice clear and steady. He placed the letters beside him, unopened, and poured fresh water into the kettle. The iron hissed softly as it met the heat. He stared into the flames. The longer he looked, the more he felt that the fire was looking back, seeing not just him, but everything that had ever been within these walls. He thought of his grandmother again. How she had lived alone in this house for decades after his grandfather passed. How she would speak of the fire as if it were a companion, not a tool. A hearth remembers, she had once said. It keeps what we give it: our warmth, our words, our silence. That's why a house never truly forgets. Ren repeated those words softly under his breath, as though speaking them might awaken something sleeping in the wood around him. The fire crackled in response. A faint sound came from the ceiling, a snow-laden branch brushing the roof. It was a simple sound, but it felt significant, as though the world were acknowledging him. He closed his eyes for a moment and listened. The wood, the fire, the faint creak of the walls all formed a quiet symphony of belonging. Time drifted. When he opened his eyes again, the light had dimmed. The sun was already sinking behind the mountain, and the world was fading into blue. He rose, slid the shoji open once more, and looked outside. The snow had begun to fall again, heavier now, thick flakes swirling in the dusk. The garden lanterns had lit themselves. The caretaker must have come earlier in the evening. Their light was golden and small, trembling slightly against the snow. Ren watched them for a long time. There was a peace in watching something so simple continue, light against dark, warmth against cold. He returned to the hearth, where the fire waited like an old friend. He added another log and sat cross-legged before it. The wood hissed, cracked, then settled into a deep, even glow. The flames shifted, taking on slow, wave-like forms. The heat brushed against his face in pulses, as gentle as breathing. He closed his eyes again. Somewhere behind him, in the shadowed hall, a floorboard creaked. He didn't move. The sound came again, softer this time, deliberate, like footsteps across tatami. He listened, not with fear, but with a strange calm. Perhaps it was only the wood. Perhaps not. The air felt warmer, not colder. And for a moment, just a moment, he could smell something that didn't belong to the present, the faint sweetness of rice. The scent of warm miso, and the hint of someone's hair brushed by smoke. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. The fire crackled once more, as though acknowledging another presence. The warmth deepened. The house exhaled. Ren smiled. And in that small smile, the past and the present breathed together. Outside, the snow continued to fall soft, endless, unhurried. Chapter 2: Footsteps in the Snow. Night fell quietly, like a shawl drawn over the mountains. The last trace of daylight vanished from the sky, leaving only the faint reflection of snow to glow in the darkness. The air had grown colder, the kind of cold that did not simply touch the skin but seemed to pass through it, clean, ancient, patient. Inside the house, the hearth burned steadily. The flames had settled into a slow, rhythmic breathing, and the soft hiss of ash filled the silence like the pulse of the night itself. Ren sat by the fire, reading one of his grandmother's letters by lantern light. The ink had faded, but the characters were careful, deliberate, like someone trying to write gently enough not to wake the silence. He could almost hear her voice in them. It wasn't what the letters said that mattered, only how they felt. Each line carried the same warmth as her hand once had, the same unspoken calm that lingered even after she was gone. Outside, the snow continued to fall. He could hear it in the pauses between the fire's breaths, in the way the world held still. Sometimes the flakes brushed the window with a faint, brushing sound, soft as feathers against glass. He turned another page, the paper whispering faintly. "When the snow falls, listen carefully," one of the letters said. "There are footsteps in it. Not of people, but of time itself." He smiled faintly. His grandmother had always spoken in riddles, but they never felt strange, only comforting, like old songs. He set the letter aside and reached for the kettle. The water inside had cooled, and when he poured it into his cup, the steam rose only faintly before vanishing into the air. He drank slowly, letting the bitterness settle on his tongue. Then, somewhere beyond the walls, he heard it. A sound, soft, deliberate, like someone stepping carefully on fresh snow. One step, then another. The house seemed to listen with him. The fire's crackling slowed. Even the clock in the next room paused between ticks. Ren turned his head toward the window, but all he could see was white darkness, the endless, shifting veil of falling snow. The sound came again, a slow, uneven rhythm. Not near, but not far either, somewhere between the trees, where the path curved toward the river. It could have been the wind. It could have been the snow slipping from a branch. And yet, he stood quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air. The floor creaked softly under his feet. He walked to the window and slid it open just enough for the night to enter. Cold rushed in, sharp and immediate. His breath rose in a pale cloud before him. The world outside was silver moonlight hidden behind clouds, snow glowing faintly from within itself. The forest beyond the garden stood utterly still. And there, between the trees, he saw it. A faint shape moving through the snow. It was small, wrapped in shadow. Not a deer too upright. Not a man too light. It moved slowly, almost weightlessly, leaving a line of footprints that glimmered briefly before being covered again by new snow. Ren watched, not moving, barely breathing. The figure paused at the edge of the garden. Then, for a heartbeat, it seemed to turn its head toward him. He could not see a face, only the suggestion of one, framed by what might have been a hood or long hair. But he felt, unmistakably, that it was looking back. A breath of wind rose, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something else, something familiar. Rice straw, wood ash, and the faintest trace of incense. Ren closed the window slowly. The sound of footsteps had stopped. He returned to the hearth, sat down, and stared at the flames. His heart was calm, though he didn't understand why. There was no fear in him, only the same quiet he felt when the fire spoke. The flames shifted. For an instant, he thought he saw the outline of a woman's hand, in them long fingers, graceful, tending the fire just as his grandmother once had. Then it was gone. He exhaled, slowly. The sound of his breath mingled with the hiss of the fire. Outside, the snow resumed its endless song. He picked up another log, fed it to the flames, and listened to the small rush of sparks. The air warmed again. The smell of cedar returned, wrapping the room in softness. He spoke quietly into the fire, not expecting an answer. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" The wood shifted, a single spark leaping into the air. He smiled. The silence that followed was not empty, it was full of presence, full of remembering. He leaned back, watching the fire sway. The world outside faded to white, and within that whiteness, time ceased to move. The letters, the snow, the flame, the faint trace of breath all became one quiet, pulsing rhythm. And when his eyes began to close, he thought he heard footsteps again, this time softer, inside the house. They stopped beside the hearth. A warmth spread near his shoulder, gentle as a hand resting there. He did not look. He did not need to. The fire glowed brighter for a moment, then settled once more into perfect calm. Chapter 3: The Woman by the Window. The night had thickened into silence. The snow had stopped falling for a while, leaving the world suspended in stillness. The air outside was luminous, faintly glowing from the unseen moon. Every branch, every roof tile, every stone in the garden was dressed in white, soft as memory. Ren lay near the hearth, wrapped in his blanket. The fire had burned low, only a few tongues of flame licking the blackened wood. The light shifted gently across the beams, rising and fading like breathing. Sleep had come and gone in waves. Sometimes he felt awake, drifting, but the boundary between the two had long since dissolved. Somewhere in that half-light of thought, he heard it again, a faint sound, a soft movement within the house. Not footsteps this time, but something quieter. The slide of paper. The whisper of fabric brushing against tatami. He opened his eyes slowly. The room glowed faintly with the red pulse of the fire. Beyond the shoji, a pale brightness filtered through, the light of snow reflecting night itself. He sat up, his breath forming a thin mist in the air. By the far window, someone was standing. The figure was still, half turned toward the snow, half toward him. At first, he thought he was dreaming a trick of exhaustion and the fire's low light. But the longer he looked, the more certain he became. It was a woman. Her hair fell loosely over her shoulders, catching the faint orange glow of the embers. She wore a white kimono, plain, unadorned. The fabric shimmered faintly, as though woven from mist. Ren didn't move. He only watched. The woman's gaze was on the window, where flakes of frost had formed delicate, feather-like patterns. Her hand rested lightly on the frame, the sleeve of her kimono falling in soft folds that brushed the floor. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, she spoke, not turning, not looking at him. Her voice was quiet, low, carrying the weight of distance and years. "The snow is gentler here," she said. "It doesn't fall, it settles. Like breath, or sleep." Ren's heart did not race. It simply slowed. Her voice felt like something remembered, not heard for the first time. He swallowed softly, the air thick with warmth and silence. "You've been here before," she continued, "many times. You just forgot the way." He tried to answer, but his words came out like a sigh, barely sounding. "Who are you?" The woman turned then, slowly, as if the movement itself were part of the silence. Her face was calm, lit faintly by the glow of the snow outside. She looked neither young nor old, timeless, as though made of the same breath that filled the night. When she spoke again, her words seemed to drift from far away. "I am whoever you remember when the fire burns low." Ren's eyes stung for a moment, though he didn't know why. The scent of smoke thickened, and he felt as if the room itself were exhaling. He looked toward the fire. The coals glowed red, and in their shifting light, he saw faint shapes, hands tending the flame, shadows of movement long gone. When he turned back, the woman was seated by the window now, her profile framed by the pale glow outside. She reached out and, with a delicate motion, traced the frost on the window with her finger. The ice melted beneath her touch, revealing the white garden beyond. "Your grandmother used to wait here for you," she whispered. "Every winter. Even when you didn't come." Ren's breath caught. He wanted to speak, to ask if she knew her, to ask how she knew these things, but something in her stillness told him that questions were unnecessary. The fire gave a soft pop. The woman smiled faintly, as if at some private thought. "You remember the song, don't you?" He frowned, but before he could ask, she began to hum. It was a small, wordless tune. The same one he had heard in his dreams as a child, his grandmother's lullaby, the song she would hum by the hearth when snow fell outside. Ren closed his eyes. The sound filled the room, moving through the smoke and the beams and the years between. It was not sad. It was not even nostalgic. It was simply warm. When he opened his eyes again, the woman's voice had faded. She was still by the window, her gaze on the falling snow. "The fire will last till morning," she said softly. "When it dies, the snow will stop. That's how it's always been." Ren nodded, though he wasn't sure if she could see him. He wanted to ask her to stay, but the words didn't come. Outside, the snow began again, slow, steady, endless. Each flake caught the faintest glimmer of light, as though the air itself remembered how to glow. The woman rose. For a moment, she looked toward him. Her eyes were calm, deep as the night itself. "When the morning comes," she whispered, "listen for the sound beneath the silence. That is where memory sleeps." And then, as the wind stirred the paper walls, as the fire cracked once more, she was gone. No footsteps. No sound. Only the faint scent of smoke and snow. Ren sat still for a long time. The firelight trembled. The frost on the window began to form again. He looked at the spot where she had been, and though the room was empty, it did not feel alone. He whispered, almost to himself, "I remember." The wind sighed in response. The house settled, and the snow continued to fall. Chapter 4: Warm Rice, Cold Moon. Dawn did not come all at once. It began as a pale shimmer behind the snow-laden hills, a soft light that seemed less like morning and more like the memory of one. The moon still hung in the sky, pale and thin, its reflection caught in the white curve of the garden stones. Inside the house, the fire had dimmed to faint red embers. They pulsed slowly, as if breathing in sleep. Ash had gathered around them like soft gray snow. Ren stirred. The blanket had slipped from his shoulders. The air was cold enough that his breath hung before him like drifting silk. He sat up slowly, stretching, listening. No footsteps. No voice. Only the faint whisper of wind against the eaves. The place where the woman had stood was empty. Yet when he looked at the window, he saw that the frost she had traced was gone, and in its place, the faintest outline of a handprint remained delicate, melting, vanishing even as he watched. He smiled quietly. The smell of wood smoke still lingered. It mingled now with another scent, rice, steaming gently from the old iron pot near the hearth. He blinked, surprised. He hadn't cooked. He hadn't even prepared the grains the night before. But there it was, a pot half filled with warm rice, and beside it, 2 bowls. He reached toward the pot. It was warm to the touch, as though just taken off the fire. He lifted the lid. Steam rose slowly, carrying the scent of earth and comfort. Each grain gleamed faintly in the morning light. He poured a small portion into a bowl, then hesitated before filling the second. For a long time, he sat there in silence. The 2 bowls side by side, steam rising and curling like pale ghosts between them. Outside, the snow reflected the first light of morning. It wasn't golden, it was silver, almost blue. The world had not yet awakened fully, it simply existed, in perfect, suspended quiet. Ren took a bite. The warmth spread through him like the fire had moved inside his chest. He exhaled softly, and as he did, he thought he could hear another breath beside his own. He looked to his left. The bowl was untouched, yet the steam from it wavered slightly, as if stirred by unseen air. He spoke without turning. "It tastes just the same." The silence that followed was deep, but not empty. It felt full of warmth, of presence, of the memory of someone listening. He set his chopsticks down gently. Beyond the window, a crow called once from the cedar tree, its voice startling against the quiet. Snow fell from a branch in answer, a small cascade of light. Ren stood and walked to the veranda. He slid the shoji open. The air outside was cold enough to sting his skin, but it was also clean, the kind of cold that cleared the mind rather than biting it. He stepped out onto the wooden boards, barefoot. The snow in the garden gleamed softly, a mirror for the fading moon. For a moment, he simply watched his breath drift upward. Then, quietly, he spoke. "Grandmother, was that you?" The wind moved gently through the trees. Somewhere far away, water cracked beneath ice, a faint, delicate sound. He took another breath. The air was so cold it almost sang. He felt calm not because he understood, but because he no longer needed to. Behind him, the fire gave a faint sigh, as if in agreement. He turned back toward it. The room looked warmer now, the colors richer, the scent of rice and smoke filling every corner. He poured tea for 2. Set the cups beside the bowls. And though only one was lifted, the steam rose from both, weaving together in the morning air. The moon was still visible through the window, a pale coin fading into daylight. Ren watched it for a while, then whispered, "I'll stay a little longer this time." The wind answered by rustling the eaves. Snow fell from the roof, landing softly in the garden below. He closed his eyes. The sound of the fire, the faint hum of the kettle, the rhythm of his breathing all blended into a single, slow heartbeat. And for the first time in many winters, the house felt alive again. Chapter 5: The River Beneath Ice. The day unfolded slowly, like a dream reluctant to end. By noon, the snowfall had stopped completely. The clouds hung low, heavy with unfallen snow, and the air carried a faint scent of cedar and wet stone. Wren stood by the window, watching the white expanse of the garden. Each flake that had fallen in the night now lay perfectly still, a tapestry woven from silence. He had eaten little that morning, but the warmth of the rice still lingered within him, as if it had kindled a quiet fire somewhere deep inside. The house was utterly still. Even the ticking of the clock seemed hesitant, its rhythm blending with the faint creak of wooden beams. Somewhere beyond the garden, he heard the slow drip of water. It was faint, a small, irregular sound, like a heartbeat buried beneath snow. Curious, he stepped outside. The cold air greeted him with a sharp clarity, filling his lungs with a clean ache. His breath drifted ahead like pale smoke. He followed the sound past the frozen path, past the old plum tree whose branches bowed low under the weight of snow. Beyond the garden wall, the ground sloped gently down to the river. The stream that ran there was thin in summer, but in winter, it almost vanished beneath the ice almost, but not completely. Wren crouched beside it. Beneath the white crust of ice, he could see the faintest shimmer of movement. The water still flowed slowly, secretly carrying reflections of light like fragments of thought. He watched, listening to the small, deliberate rhythm of dripping water, and in that sound, he began to hear something else. Not words, not melody, but the echo of a voice as familiar as his own. Even when it freezes, the river keeps its song. He closed his eyes. The memory returned easily now, his grandmother's voice, the warmth of her hands, guiding his as a child when he first built a snow lantern by this same riverbank. Everything that seems still is only waiting to move again. The words came back to him as if whispered by the snow itself. He opened his eyes. The light had changed, the grayness of the sky had softened to a pale silver, and for the first time in days, he could see the faintest glimmer of sun. The ice caught it, a thin ribbon of light running along the river's surface, sliding between the cracks like liquid glass. He smiled. For a moment, it felt as if the earth itself were waking. The sound of the river grew clearer. It was not loud, but deep, like the slow pulse of time beneath everything that sleeps. He reached down, touched the ice gently with his fingertips. It was cold, but not lifeless. Beneath it, he could feel movement, the steady push of water finding its way through narrow paths, refusing to stop. He whispered to no one in particular. "You're still here." A crow answered from somewhere high above. Its cry echoed across the valley, brief, distant, then gone. Wren stayed there for a long while, watching the light shift across the ice, watching the river breathe. And as he did, he realized that something within him, something that had been frozen for many years, had begun to thaw as well. He stood slowly. The cold no longer bit at him, it simply existed, part of the same rhythm as his heartbeat. When he looked back toward the house, he saw thin smoke rising once again from the chimney. The fire had not gone out. It was waiting for him, as though someone had tended it in his absence. He smiled faintly, then began to walk back through the snow. Each step sank softly, the sound blending with the river's murmur. It was as if the world were breathing with him, snow, air, water, heart. By the time he reached the veranda, the first rays of sunlight had touched the edge of the roof. They glowed faintly against the icicles, turning them to drops of gold before falling soundlessly to the ground. He paused at the threshold, looked once more toward the river, and bowed his head slightly, a quiet gesture for everything that lived beneath silence. Then he stepped inside. The house greeted him with warmth, the faint scent of ash and tea. He went to the hearth, knelt before it, and stirred the embers gently. A few sparks rose, tiny stars vanishing into the air. "Still flowing," he murmured, "even when I can't see it." The fire answered with a quiet crackle. The room glowed softly again. Wren closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the river beneath the ice, to the wind beyond the walls, to the calm, steady rhythm of his own breathing. And slowly, as warmth returned to his hands, a small, quiet peace took root in his chest. Chapter 6: A Hearth for Two. Evening returned like a quiet tide. The light faded behind the mountains, and once again, snow began to fall, slow, steady, endless. Wren sat by the hearth, a blanket over his knees, the same kettle hanging above the glowing coals. The fire had found its rhythm again. Each crackle was soft, each spark rising and fading like a sigh. Outside, the wind moved gently through the bamboo grove. It made a sound like someone whispering secrets to the night. Wren poured tea into 2 cups. He did it without thinking, his hands moving as if remembering an old ritual. Steam rose, pale and fragile, curling into the air before dissolving into the dim light. He set 1 cup before him, and the other across the hearth. He didn't look at it, but he felt the warmth spread as if someone were sitting there. For a while, he said nothing. The sound of the fire filled the silence, a low, breathing rhythm that seemed almost alive. Then, quietly, he spoke. "It's strange," he said. "The more I listen, the more it feels like the fire knows me." He smiled faintly, half to himself. "Or maybe it's you, sitting there, waiting for me to finally say something." The flames flickered, a small burst of light reflecting in the iron kettle. The second cup of tea still steamed gently, though untouched. Ren reached for his own cup, cupped it in both hands, and drank slowly. The taste was faintly bitter, but the warmth spread through him like memory. He set the cup down. His gaze drifted toward the empty cushion across from him. "When I was a child," he said softly, "you told me that every fire remembers its warmth. That even when it dies, the next flame carries its memory." The fire answered with a slow pop, a small spark jumping and disappearing into the air. Ren nodded. "You were right. I didn't understand it then, but now I think I do." He leaned forward slightly, rested his hands near the coals. "The warmth doesn't belong to the fire," he said. "It belongs to the moment it touches." The house creaked softly in agreement. Outside, snow brushed against the windows, making faint, delicate sounds like fingertips across silk. He closed his eyes. "I thought I'd forgotten you," he whispered. "But you were never gone, were you?" The fire shifted. A new flame rose, steady and calm. The air in the room changed, not colder, not warmer, but fuller. Ren opened his eyes. Across the hearth, the second cup was empty. He didn't startle. He didn't move. He simply smiled, a quiet, tired, peaceful smile. "You always finished first," he said. The fire crackled softly. Outside, the snow thickened, turning the world beyond the window into a single, glowing white. He felt a presence then, not seen, not heard, but felt in the way the air around him softened, in the way his heartbeat slowed. Someone was there. He looked up slowly. On the other side of the hearth, the faintest shimmer of light took shape. Not bright, not solid, but enough to see the outline of a figure, the same soft glow he had seen that first night. Her face was calm, her hair loose, her form woven from warmth and memory. She spoke softly, her voice like the rustle of falling snow. "You remembered the tea." Ren nodded. "And the fire." She smiled. "The fire remembers you, too." For a long while, they said nothing more. The silence between them was not empty, it was full of everything they had never needed to say. Ren reached toward the fire, added a small piece of wood. The flame caught, burned brighter. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. "How even ash still gives light." The woman tilted her head slightly, her eyes reflecting the glow. "That's what warmth is," she said. Not something you hold, but something you share. Her words lingered in the air, drifting like breath. Ren felt the truth of them settle deep within him. He looked at her again and saw that her form had begun to fade, becoming one with the light of the fire. "Will you go?" he asked. She smiled gently. "I never left." And then, like the last spark of a candle, she was gone. Only the warmth remained soft, endless, alive. Ren sat there for a long time, listening to the fire. He closed his eyes. The sound of the snow, the hum of the river beneath the ice, the heartbeat of the house itself all blended into one continuous rhythm. And within that rhythm, he felt not loneliness, but belonging. He whispered, "Thank you." The fire breathed once more, as though returning the word. Then, the night deepened, the snow continued to fall, and the house dreamed quietly around him. Epilogue: when the snow stops falling. Morning arrived not with light, but with stillness. The snow had stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the world wrapped in silence so complete that even the air seemed to hesitate before moving. Ren woke slowly, his body heavy with warmth. The fire had burned down to a bed of soft gray ash, and thin threads of smoke curled upward, weaving with the pale light entering through the paper screens. He sat up, and for a long moment, simply listened. No wind, no birds yet, only the deep, quiet hum of a world resting. The house felt lighter somehow, as though a great breath had finally been released. He rose, folded the blanket, and opened the shoji. Light spilled in soft, colorless, the kind that holds every shade of white within it. The garden lay untouched, every branch of the plum tree etched with frost. Beneath the eaves, icicles hung like glass bells, and as the faintest breeze passed, they gave a sound too delicate to name a sound halfway between water and silence. Ren stepped outside. His footprints from the day before were gone. The snow had smoothed them away, leaving the path pristine, as if time itself had chosen to begin again. He walked toward the river. The air was cold, but it carried a gentleness, now a promise rather than a warning. When he reached the bank, he saw that the ice had begun to melt. Tiny rivulets of water ran across its surface, catching the morning light in trembling silver lines. The sound was faint but steady, like a slow exhale. He knelt, watched the water move, and whispered, "You never stopped, did you?" The river answered with its quiet rhythm. He smiled. The mountains in the distance glowed faintly pink, the sun just touching their highest ridges. Somewhere, unseen, a bird gave a single call, clear, soft, like the first word spoken after a long silence. Ren stood for a while longer, breathing the cold air. Then he turned back toward the house. The smoke from the chimney rose straight into the sky, thin and even. Inside, the kettle still hung above the coals, and when he poured water into it, the hiss of steam filled the room like the sound of a sigh. He set out a single cup this time. The tea was pale, its surface trembling in the quiet light. He took a sip, closed his eyes. The warmth spread through him gently, not sharp like before, but deep, the kind that settles into the bones. He looked toward the window, toward the cushion across the hearth. It was empty now, but the air above it shimmered faintly in the morning sun. He bowed his head slightly. "Thank you for keeping the fire." The fire gave a single pop and then stilled. Outside, the snow began to glisten as the light grew stronger. Drops of water formed along the eaves, falling one by one into the soft white below. Each sound was distinct, each echo fading into the greater hush of the morning. Ren opened the door. The air smelled of cedar and melting snow. He stepped outside once more, barefoot in the cold. The snow no longer bit it welcomed. It gave beneath his feet, soft as cloth. He looked up. The sky was vast and pale blue, the color of new beginnings. The last of the clouds drifted away, and from somewhere beyond the valley, the faint sound of a bell reached him, perhaps a temple, only the wind moving through metal. He listened, and for the first time, he did not think of endings. He thought only of warmth and of the quiet that follows when everything has found its place. The world was still, but within that stillness, life moved, the river beneath the thawing ice, the roots beneath the snow, the fire still burning, unseen, in the heart. Ren turned back to the house. The door slid closed behind him with a gentle sound, and for a moment, the reflection of the snowlight lingered across the tatami like water. He knelt by the hearth once more, fed it a small branch, and watched as the new flame caught. The light flickered softly against his face. He smiled, a quiet, steady smile. "It's warm," he whispered. The fire seemed to nod in reply. And as the last trace of night vanished from the valley, Ren let his eyes close again, not from weariness, but from peace. Outside, the snow melted, drop by drop, until all that remained was the sound of water returning to earth. The silence that followed was not empty. It was complete. It was home. Whispers of the wind in a shrine forest. Prologue: the breath beneath the torii. The night had fallen softly over the mountains of Japan. A silver thread of moonlight drifted down through the mist, touching the surface of the forest like a whisper. Somewhere far above, a wind stirred the pine needles, and the sound rippled through the stillness, slow, unhurried, like the breath of a world half asleep. Beyond the edge of the mountain path stood a torii gate, its wooden pillars softened by moss and time. The red had faded to a quiet brown, and the rope above it swayed ever so slightly, brushing against the cool air. Behind it, a narrow trail led into the forest, a path that few people walked now, though it had once been worn smooth by many feet. It was said that this was a sacred forest, watched over by a shrine that no longer appeared on any modern map. The people of the nearby village still bowed when they passed the mountain, even if they had never climbed it. They said the wind here carried voices, gentle, ancient voices that spoke to those who listened with a still heart. And tonight, the wind was awake. A single leaf drifted down through the moonlight, spinning in slow circles before coming to rest on the stone step beneath the torii. The step itself was cool, worn by rain and seasons, holding the memory of thousands of nights just like this one. Somewhere in the distance, a deer moved quietly through the grass, and the faint ring of a bell echoed soft, almost like a sigh. In that stillness, the forest breathed. The sound was not of life bustling, but of life resting. The trees leaned close to one another, whispering through their leaves, and the brook nearby murmured its endless, dreamlike tune. If one were to step beneath the torii, to pass from the world of man into the realm of stillness, they would feel it, a shift in the air, delicate yet profound, as though time itself had decided to slow its pulse. The scent of cedar, the faint tang of stone and moss, the cool breath of the mountain all mingled together, weaving a tapestry of quiet reverence. In the heart of the forest stood the shrine, small, humble, wrapped in the shadows of tall suji trees. Its roof was covered with fallen leaves and silver threads of spider silk. The Shimenawa rope around the sacred tree nearby was frayed but strong, as though it had learned endurance through years of solitude. The wooden offertory box, its edges smoothed by countless hands, sat empty now, except for a few coins that had turned green with time. A lantern, half buried in the moss, leaned slightly, yet when the breeze touched it, it gave off a faint clink, the sound of something old remembering itself. It was said that the kami, the spirit of the shrine, still lingered here, not out of duty, but out of affection. Affection for the wind that carried prayers, for the trees that had grown tall like watchful guardians, for the fox that still came to rest by the steps, curling into a quiet flame of fur beneath the stars. The wind stirred again. It brushed past the torii, through the cedar branches, down the path of stone, and into the heart of the shrine. It lingered for a moment like a sigh of remembrance, then circled the offering box, scattering a few fallen leaves into the air. Each leaf turned slowly, glowing faintly in the moonlight, before drifting back to rest. The sound they made was soft, rhythmic, a lullaby of nature, ancient and endless. In that rhythm, there was a voice. Not a voice of words, but of feeling, something like peace, like a deep exhale that had waited for centuries. And if someone had been there to listen, truly listen, they might have heard it say, "Be still. You are home." The forest, in its deep slumber, seemed to answer. The stream whispered in reply, the wind harmonized, and even the shadows under the trees seemed to nod. It was as if everything, stone, leaf, air, and moonlight, had agreed to rest together. Far away, in the village below, the faint sound of a temple bell drifted up the mountain. Its tone was slow and low, the sound of time folding itself gently into the night. The villagers were already asleep, their dreams carried by the same wind that touched the shrine. Somewhere in one of those dreams, perhaps, a child wandered beneath a torii gate, following the sound of leaves and wind, feeling the hush of sacred air wrap around them like a soft blanket. They would not know if it was real or not, but they would wake with the faint scent of cedar on their pillow, and the memory of something kind and wordless resting in their chest. Hours passed like minutes, and the moon began to sink behind the mountain. Mist gathered along the ground, coiling around the roots of the trees, making the world look like it was breathing. The wind had grown gentler now, no longer speaking, only humming a note so low it could be mistaken for silence. The shrine stood quiet, neither awake nor asleep, simply existing as it always had between one breath and the next. Somewhere nearby, a small fox stirred. Its eyes glimmered in the fading light, and it looked toward the torii as though remembering something from long ago. Then, with silent steps, it walked down the path, its tail brushing against the stones, its movement smooth, unhurried, like the passage of a dream through a sleeping mind. When it reached the gate, the fox paused. It turned its head to the wind, as if to listen one last time to that ancient voice that whispered through the forest. And then it bowed, just once, gently, and vanished into the mist. By the time the first light of dawn touched the mountain, the forest was still again, wrapped in the faint gold of morning. The torii stood as it always had, watching over the boundary between the waking and the dreaming. The breath of the wind lingered, soft and invisible, carrying the scent of cedar, moss, and sleep. It drifted past the shrine, past the trees, past the village below, a tender murmur reminding every soul it touched that rest, like wind, always returns. And so began the story of the shrine forest, where the wind remembers every prayer, and every dream, no matter how small, is carried home beneath the torii. Chapter 1: The Forest of Slow Steps. The morning had unfolded softly, like a silk ribbon unrolling in the mist. The mountain was awake but unhurried, its trees stretching in silence, their shadows long and gentle upon the earth. The traveler came with the light, not seeking anything, not escaping anything, but moving as one does when the soul needs to remember how to breathe. Their footsteps fell lightly on the moss-covered path, each sound fading almost before it was heard, as though the forest itself absorbed the noise, folding it into the rhythm of its own slow pulse. The path wound upward through cedar and maple, its stones cool with dew, its edges soft with fallen leaves that smelled faintly of rain. Overhead, the branches formed a canopy that shimmered with morning light, patches of gold scattered across the forest floor like pieces of a broken dream. Now and then, the traveler paused. Not because they were tired, but because there was something sacred in stillness. When the wind came, it came gently brushing against the traveler's sleeve, carrying with it the scent of cedar, the memory of night, and the whisper of unseen wings. The traveler closed their eyes. In that breath, the forest spoke not in words, but in the hush between the heartbeat and the wind. Somewhere far away, water trickled over stone. A single bird sang slowly, as if remembering a forgotten melody. And from the distance, the faint chime of a bell drifted through the trees. The traveler smiled without realizing it. It was not the smile of joy, nor of sadness, but the small, quiet expression that comes when the heart recognizes home. The forest path grew narrower. Here, the air was cooler, touched by the shadows of tall bamboo. The traveler's steps became slower, softer, not because they wished to hurry, but because the world around them seemed to ask for gentleness. A dragonfly floated beside them, its wings catching the light in ripples of silver. When it veered away, it left behind only silence, a silence that shimmered, like water disturbed and then still again. There was a shrine stone half hidden in moss by the path. Its carved letters were faint, the edges worn away by time and rain. The traveler stopped before it, brushed away a few fallen leaves, and bowed, not from obligation, but from the quiet instinct to show respect for what endures. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then the wind sighed through the bamboo, and somewhere nearby, a pair of white petals drifted down from an unseen tree. The traveler caught one in their palm. It trembled there, so light it could have been a heartbeat. They whispered, "Thank you," and let it go. Time was slower here. Even the sunlight seemed to move differently, slanting down through the leaves as if it, too, were in no hurry. The traveler followed the curve of the path until they reached a clearing. A small pond lay there, perfectly still, its surface holding the reflection of clouds and sky so clearly that it was hard to tell which was above and which was below. They knelt by the edge of the pond. Tiny fish moved beneath the surface, their scales glinting like drifting thoughts. A frog leapt silently into the water, sending ripples outward, concentric, measured, each wave fading into the stillness as though never there at all. The traveler dipped their fingers into the water. It was cool and smooth, the kind of cool that wakes the skin but calms the heart. In that touch, they felt something, not a message, not a vision, but a deep, wordless understanding that peace does not need to be found. It is always here, waiting beneath the noise of the world, like still water beneath the surface of a storm. The wind returned. It moved through the clearing, lifting a few leaves into the air before carrying them down the path ahead. The traveler rose and followed, each step matching the slow rhythm of the forest step, breath, heartbeat, wind. All things moving, all things resting, all things simply being. At the edge of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its trunk wide enough for 3 people to wrap their arms around. The bark was scarred with age, but from those scars grew moss and tiny blossoms, as if even time itself had learned tenderness. The traveler rested a hand upon the trunk. The surface was rough, but beneath it, they could feel the faint pulse of life, slow, deep, steady. It was the same rhythm as the forest, the same rhythm as the breath that moved through them. They closed their eyes again, and in that stillness, they heard it, the faintest whisper of wind, the same voice that had passed through the torii last night. "Be still. You are home." The traveler did not answer. They simply breathed, and the forest breathed with them. As noon approached, light streamed down between the branches, turning the air golden. Specks of dust floated like fireflies, and every sound seemed softer as though wrapped in silk. The traveler found a small stone bench near the path and sat. They removed their pack and laid it beside them, then tilted their head back, gazing through the canopy of green. Above them, the leaves moved like slow waves, and for a moment, the world seemed made only of color and sound, the hum of cicadas, the sigh of wind, the soft rhythm of breath. They could have fallen asleep there, and perhaps they did. The difference between waking and dreaming was thin in this place. Even the light seemed to hesitate, as if unsure whether to shine or to rest. When the traveler finally rose, the shadows had begun to lengthen. The forest smelled faintly of rain again, though no clouds had come. Somewhere far off, a stream murmured, and the traveler followed its sound, letting the path guide them as the day leaned quietly toward evening. The air was cooler now, and the wind, too, had changed slower, deeper, carrying a tone of distant bells. Through the trees, they could see something glowing faintly ahead, the first of the stone lanterns that marked the outer path of the shrine. Its surface was covered in moss, but within it, a small flame still flickered, steady and patient. The traveler paused before it. They watched the tiny light dance against the shadows, its glow soft and unwavering. The flame did not seek to illuminate. It simply existed quietly, humbly, a reminder that even the smallest light has purpose, especially in places where darkness is kind. The traveler bowed once more, and the wind, in reply, moved through the trees like a sigh of blessing. As the evening deepened, the traveler found a resting spot beside the lantern. They spread their small blanket, sat down, and listened. The forest was alive, yet still. Somewhere, an owl called. Somewhere else, water dripped from leaf to leaf, each drop falling like a single note in a song that had no end. The traveler drew their knees close and whispered to the night, "Thank you for letting me walk here." The words disappeared into the air, but the wind carried them gently, carefully, as though placing them among the trees, where prayers and dreams gathered like dew. And as darkness wrapped the mountain, the traveler closed their eyes. They felt the earth beneath them, the scent of cedar and moss, the rhythm of the forest's breath. The world was vast, and yet, in that moment, it fit perfectly within the quiet of their chest. The wind passed once more through the torii, far away. The same wind touched the shrine, the forest, and the resting traveler, linking them together, one breath, shared among all things. And in that shared breath, night and soul and forest became one. The forest slept. The traveler dreamed. The wind whispered. And everything was at peace. Chapter 2: Lanterns of the Evening Path. Evening settled upon the forest like a soft breath, slow and unbroken. The sun had long since slipped behind the ridge, and in its place came the tender light of dusk, a blue so deep it seemed to hum rather than shine. The traveler opened their eyes. They had not realized how long they had been resting. The sound of cicadas had faded, replaced by the low, steady chorus of night insects. A faint breeze brushed their faces, carrying the cool scent of the approaching night. Before them, the stone lantern still glowed. Its flame was smaller now, but it flickered with the patience of something that knew how to wait. The traveler rose slowly, their movements matching the pace of the forest. They bowed once to the lantern, a silent gesture of gratitude, then continued along the path that wound deeper into the gathering night. The way was lined with mossy stones and fallen leaves. Here and there, another lantern stood, some bright, some dim, some long extinguished, their bowls filled with rainwater and stars. The traveler paused before each one. Sometimes they placed a finger on the cool stone. Sometimes they whispered a word they could not remember afterward. The forest listened, and the lanterns, too, seemed to hear back, their light breathing in rhythm with the wind. It was said, in the old tales, that these lanterns were once the resting souls of those who had prayed at the shrine. When their time in the world of men had ended, their gratitude lingered, shaping itself into gentle flames that lit the paths for others who wandered between dusk and dream. The traveler did not know if this story was true. But as they walked, they could not help but feel watched, not by eyes, but by kindness itself. Above the treetops, the first stars began to appear. Their reflections shimmered faintly in the pools of water gathered on the stones. The air had grown cooler now, and with it came a hush, not emptiness, but fullness in its quiet. A fox crossed the path ahead, its fur the color of moonlight on sand. It stopped just long enough to glance at the traveler, then vanished into the underbrush without a sound. For a long moment, only the sound of the wind remained. It moved like breath through the trees, touching the lanterns one by one, as if lighting them not with fire, but with memory. Each flame brightened as the wind passed, and the forest began to glow, a procession of soft, golden lights leading upward toward the shrine. The traveler followed. Their footsteps matched the slow rhythm of the light, and soon it felt as though they were walking within a dream, each step deepening the calm, each breath carrying the scent of pine, rain, and faint incense. Somewhere ahead, the faint ringing of a bell sounded. Not the bell of the temple below, but a smaller one, the kind hung by a shrine entrance, where the rope frays from years of devotion. The traveler's heart stirred, though they did not know why. Perhaps it was the sound itself, the way it rose, pure and solitary, and then faded into the air as if swallowed by peace. Or perhaps it was memory, something deep within them, something older than their own name, answering to the bell like a child to a lullaby. When they reached the bend in the path, the forest opened again, revealing a gentle slope covered in stone lanterns. There were hundreds of them. Some stood tall and proud, others leaned gently, their bases swallowed by moss. The flames within them swayed in time with the wind, casting slow, shifting halos of light that touched the trunks of the trees. The traveler stopped, overwhelmed by the stillness. The air shimmered faintly, not with heat, but with quiet power, as if the space itself were aware of being seen. They could hear their own heartbeat now, steady, soft, and between each pulse, a faint whisper. The same ancient voice that had moved through the Torii, that had spoken in the forest, that had followed the wind here. It said nothing new, only what it always said. Be still. You are home. The traveler stepped among the lanterns. The air here was heavy with memory. Every flame seemed to carry a fragment of something, a prayer, a dream, a farewell. As they passed, the traveler thought they could hear faint sounds, slaughter like running water, footsteps in snow, the echo of someone's voice calling a name that was never answered. But the sounds brought no sadness. They were gentle, woven through with peace, like the final notes of a song that knows how to rest. The traveler reached one lantern that had gone dark. Its bowl was filled with rainwater and fallen petals. Kneeling before it, they cupped their hands around the space and breathed softly into it. The air shimmered, and for a moment, a small light stirred, faint, trembling, then growing steady. The traveler smiled. No one had taught them this, but somehow, the act had felt natural, a continuation of something older than memory. The forest grew darker still. The stars above were brighter now, glimmering through the canopy like tiny lanterns of the sky. The wind whispered low, carrying the rustle of leaves, the soft crackle of candlelight, and the faint scent of sandalwood. The traveler sat down beside one of the larger lanterns. The flame within danced slowly, casting its glow over their face and the stones nearby. They could see their own shadow stretching long across the path, merging with the shadows of trees, until all became one. A gentle darkness that felt like belonging. For a long time, they simply breathed. The forest breathed with them. Every sound was slow, rhythmic, the flutter of wings, the drip of water, the pulse of earth beneath the roots. It was as if the entire world had exhaled together, releasing everything that did not need to be carried into the night. Then, from somewhere higher on the mountain, a light appeared, not from a lantern, but from the shrine itself. It was a pale glow, soft and constant, as though the heart of the forest had opened an eye. The traveler rose. The path continued upward, narrow but clear, each lantern along the way now lit. They began to climb, slow steps, steady breathing, their mind as still as the air around them. And as they walked, the forest changed. The trees seemed taller now, the air thinner, filled with a deep, resonant quiet that vibrated in the bones. At times, they could have sworn the wind was singing not a melody, but a tone, low and endless. The kind of sound that reminds you the world is alive. When they reached the final lantern, the traveler stopped. Ahead stood the torii, the same gate that had watched over the forest for centuries, its wood glimmering faintly under the starlight. The shrine beyond it was small, but its presence filled the clearing like a heartbeat. Lantern light shimmered along its edges, and somewhere near its steps, a small bell swayed in the wind, singing its single, clear note again and again. The traveler bowed deeply. They did not speak. Words, here, felt unnecessary, too heavy for a place that breathed in silence. When they lifted their head, they saw that the flames in the lanterns had changed. Each one burned not gold, but silver. And the forest itself seemed to glow from within, as though it had drawn the starlight down to rest among its roots. The traveler stepped through the torii. The air shifted, not colder, not warmer, but different, as though they had stepped from one dream into another. The light dimmed, the sounds softened, and the wind spoke once more. Not with words, but with the same gentle tone that had moved through the forest since the first dawn. You are seen. You are safe. You are home. The traveler closed their eyes. A tear, soft as dew, touched their cheek. Not of sadness but of recognition. They breathed in. The air was cool, fragrant with cedar and incense. They breathed out. The world breathed with them. And somewhere in that quiet harmony, the lanterns flickered once more, their flames bowing low in a dance of farewell. The traveler bowed in return. And the wind, carrying both gesture and silence, rose gently through the trees, toward the stars. The forest of lanterns shimmered one last time, then stilled. Only the soft light of the shrine remained, holding the night in its calm embrace. The traveler stepped forward, each motion unhurried, each breath a prayer without words. And the wind, eternal and tender, whispered once more through the dark. Rest now. The light will stay. Chapter 3 Echoes of the Bamboo Grove. The night was not yet gone, but already the first light of dawn was weighting a soft gray. Trembling along the horizon, the promise of morning hidden within the folds of shadow. The traveler woke to the whisper of wind. It brushed against their cheek like a hand made of air, gentle and cool, carrying the faint scent of bamboo and rain. The shrine behind them was silent. Its lanterns had dimmed, their glow now like faint stars in the mist. Only the soft, rhythmic creak of the bell rope moved in the wind, a sound so old it seemed to exist outside of time. The traveler rose. They bowed once toward the shrine, a quiet farewell, a promise to remember, and turned toward the narrow path that led deeper into the forest. The path descended slowly, the stones slick with dew, the air thick with the scent of earth and green things waking. The bamboo began gradually, first a few scattered stalks, then a gathering, and finally a vast grove stretching as far as the eye could see. Each stalk rose straight and tall, its pale green trunks gleaming faintly in the early light. The leaves whispered among themselves, not a chatter, but a conversation as old as wind. The traveler stepped into the grove. Instantly, the sound of the world changed. The air here was different still, yet full of quiet sound. Every movement of the wind became music. Every rustle of leaf a word half heard, half remembered. It was as if the bamboo did not speak to the ears, but directly to the soul. The traveler walked slowly, their footsteps muffled by fallen leaves. The world narrowed, only the soft rhythm of bamboo knocking together, and the faint sigh of the wind weaving through. For a moment, the traveler thought they heard voices. Not human voices, but something softer, something made of memory and air. A child's laughter, the rustle of silk, a distant song carried on a summer breeze long ago. Each sound came and went, like ripples in still water. They did not linger. They did not frighten. They simply were. The traveler paused beneath a cluster of tall stalks, watching how they swayed not together, but each in its own time, like 1,000 hearts breathing to the same unseen rhythm. They sat upon a smooth stone, closed their eyes, and listened. The bamboo grove spoke in layers. A creak, a sigh, a soft tap of wood on wood. The rhythm was uneven, yet harmonious, a lullaby born of chance and eternity. As the traveler listened, something within them began to settle. The weight of words, of thoughts, of whatever they had carried up the mountain, all began to drift away. Their breath matched the pulse of the grove. Their heartbeats slowed, and in that space between one sound and the next, they felt something open, a stillness vast enough to hold every memory they had ever forgotten. It began with a scent, faint incense, mixed with plum blossoms. Then came an imagery, a courtyard bathed in moonlight, paper lanterns swaying in a gentle breeze. Voices murmured, footsteps echoed on stone. A woman laughed softly, and someone, perhaps the traveler, perhaps not, answered. The vision shimmered like water disturbed by the wind. It was not real, but neither was it false. It was the echo of a life once lived, perhaps here, perhaps only dreamed. The traveler did not reach for it. They let it drift, like a petal caught in a stream. The bamboo rustled softly, and the sound washed the vision away. Only the wind remained. When they opened their eyes again, the grove was brighter. A pale mist drifted through the stalks, and the first birds were beginning to stir. Each call was clear, fragile, like tiny bells in the distance. The travelers stood. They pressed a hand against one of the bamboo trunks. The surface was cool and smooth, its life steady and patient beneath their palm. They felt the faint tremor of the wind traveling through it, the movement, passing from stalk to stalk, from root to root, until it reached the far edges of the grove. It was the forest's way of breathing, of remembering itself. As the traveler continued, they came upon a small clearing. In its center stood a single stone basin, filled with clear water that reflected the gray light of dawn. Beside it lay a ladle made of bamboo, its handle polished smooth by countless hands. The traveler knelt and lifted it. The water within gleamed like glass. They poured it slowly over their hands, feeling the chill trace down their skin, and then cupped a small sip to their lips. It tasted of rain, of leaf, of quiet time. They set the ladle back, and for a moment, watched as the surface of the water stilled again, clear, perfectly still until it seemed not to exist at all. Only reflection remained. The sound of a bamboo clapper echoed through the grove, sharp, rhythmic, yet oddly soothing. Somewhere nearby, a breeze had knocked a hollow stalk against another. Clack. Pause. Clack. Pause. The sound repeated, steady and timeless, like a heart reminding the world to keep time. The traveler smiled. They could imagine a monk, long ago, placing the clapper here to measure the passing of hours. But now, it no longer counted time, it simply was. And that was enough. They followed the sound until they reached the edge of the grove. There, the trees opened to reveal a low hill covered in morning mist. The light was shifting gray to blue, blue to silver as the first true breath of dawn spread through the forest. The traveler looked back once more at the bamboo grove. The stalks swayed gently, their voices rising and falling in a music that would never end. It was not the grove's farewell, but its continuation, a reminder that even silence sings. The traveler bowed deeply. "Thank you," they whispered. The wind passed through the grove in answer, a single, soft sigh that seemed to carry 1,000 memories within it. And then it was still. The traveler began to climb the hill. Each step carried them higher, through drifting veils of mist that shimmered like dreams dissolving in light. Above, the sky was opening, a pale wash of dawn spreading over the world. The stars faded one by one, like candles gently blown out by unseen hands. When they reached the top, the traveler turned. From there, they could see the forest stretching billowy sea of green and silver, whispering beneath the wind. Somewhere within it, the shrine still slept, its bell quiet, its torii standing watch. The traveler breathed deeply, filling their lungs with the cool morning air. And for a heartbeat, they felt themselves expand, becoming part of the wind, the grove, the breath of the mountain itself. The first light of the sun touched their face. It was warm, gentle, the touch of a world reborn. The wind rose, moving through the bamboo once more. Its voice was calm, endless, and in it, the traveler heard again the quiet words that had followed them since the beginning. "Be still. You are home." They closed their eyes. The sound of the bamboo faded into the wind, and the wind into silence. When they opened them again, the day had begun. Chapter 4: A Shrine Keeper's Dream. The night had deepened again. Mist rolled slowly through the mountains, and the air held the faint, sweet scent of rain upon cedar. At the heart of the forest, the shrine waited quiet, timeless, breathing with the rhythm of the world. Within its wooden walls, a small light glowed. It came from a single candle, set beside a bowl of salt and a branch of evergreen. The flame bent and straightened as the wind passed through the open shoji, its reflection trembling upon the polished floor. The shrine keeper sat nearby. She was older than the moss that crept along the stone steps outside. Her hair, once black as ink, was now silver, and her hands, though thin and frail, still moved with the grace of one who had long known devotion. Each evening, she lit the candle. Each dawn, she extinguished it. That was her duty, but it was more than that. It was a rhythm, a heartbeat that joined her to the mountain itself. Tonight, as she bowed before the altar, she whispered the same words she had whispered for years. Let the wind be gentle. Let the trees stand tall. Let those who wander find their way home. Her voice was soft, but the wind heard. It always did. When her prayers were done, the shrine keeper sat quietly, her gaze lingering on the flickering flame. The candle burned low. Outside, the forest shifted, its voice a thousand threads of sound, the sigh of leaves, the murmur of water, the low hum of insects. She listened. It was a music she had known all her life, yet tonight it felt different, as though the forest itself were holding its breath. The keeper smiled faintly. Perhaps the spirits were near. Perhaps they were listening too. Her eyelids grew heavy. The flame blurred. And somewhere between waking and sleep, she slipped quietly into a dream. In her dream, she stood once again at the entrance of the shrine. But it was not night. The sky above was pale gold. the kind of light that exists neither in dawn nor in dusk. The forest shimmered, each leaf moving as if stirred by unseen hands. The air was filled with sound, soft, layered, infinite. Not music, but the echo of all the world breathing together. The shrine itself was different. New, unweathered, its wood is rich and warm. Lanterns burned on every side, their flames steady, untouched by wind. Children's laughter rang somewhere beyond the trees. Footsteps passed along the path. The scent of incense and rice filled the air. The keeper's heart ached, though she could not say why. It was as if she had returned to something she loved and yet had lost. A voice came from behind her. "You have tended well," it said, soft and low, like the sound of the wind moving through water. She turned. There stood a young woman dressed in white robes. Her hair shone like dark silk, and her eyes were calm as moonlight. The shrine keeper bowed deeply. "Are you the one who guards this place now?" The young woman smiled. "No, this is your shrine. I am only the wind that remembers." The words settled into the air like falling petals. The keeper felt her heart grow warm. "I have been here so long," she said softly. "Sometimes I forget what I'm keeping." The wind woman tilted her head. "You keep what cannot be forgotten. The breath between prayer and silence. The space where dreams return home." The keeper lowered her gaze. Her hands trembled slightly. "I am tired," she whispered. "I have kept the flame so many nights. What happens when I can no longer rise to light it?" The wind moved closer. It touched her shoulder, cool and weightless. "Then the forest will light it for you," the voice said. "The moss will glow, the rain will shine, and the breath of the mountain will carry the light onward." The keeper looked toward the altar. There, the candle burned brighter, its flame no longer small, but tall and golden, its light spilling into every corner of the shrine. Through the walls, she could see the trees bending gently, their leaves shimmering with tiny points of light. The wind whispered again. "Everything you have ever offered still breathes here. Every prayer, every tear, every word of gratitude, they have not vanished. They have become the air." The keeper closed her eyes. In that moment, she heard them, the echoes of voices she had known long ago. The laughter of children, the deep songs of pilgrims, the hush of her own teacher's voice guiding her hand. All of them, woven into the wind. Tears slid down her cheeks, but they felt light, as if even her sorrow had learned to float. She knelt and placed her hands upon the floor, bowing deeply. "Then I have not kept the shrine in vain," she whispered. The wind's laughter, if wind could laugh, moved softly through the air. "Nothing kept in kindness is ever lost." The forest outside began to hum. The sound was not loud, but vast, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. It moved through the walls, through the keeper's bones, through the candle's flame until everything glowed with the same quiet rhythm. For a moment, the keeper could no longer tell where she ended and the shrine began. Then, the dream began to change. The golden light deepened to silver. The air cooled, and the wind, which had stayed near, began to withdraw. The young woman smiled once more. "You will wake soon," she said. "When you do, listen to the trees. They will tell you what comes next." The keeper bowed again. "Will I see you again?" The wind's form shimmered, becoming transparent, her voice now only a breeze. "You always do," it said. "For I am the breath that moves between your prayers." And then she was gone. The keeper opened her eyes. The candle was still burning beside her. Its flame was small, but steady, a living thing. Outside, dawn had begun. The sky was soft gray, and a thin ribbon of mist curled through the forest. The keeper rose slowly, her joints stiff but her heart light. She walked to the open doorway and looked out. The trees stood tall in the morning hush, their leaves glistening with dew. A breeze stirred, gentle and familiar. She could hear it moving through the branches, not merely sound, but speech. It said nothing she could name, yet she understood every word. The forest was breathing. And she, too, was breathing with it. The keeper bowed toward the trees. "Thank you," she said, "for keeping me as I have kept you." She turned back to the shrine, extinguished the candle with a slow breath, and smiled as the smoke rose, a thin, silver ribbon joining the air. "Be still," she whispered, echoing the words that had carried through the forest for generations. "You are home." And as the wind passed softly through the doorway, it carried her words outward to the trees, to the hills, to the sleeping traveler still resting beneath the morning light. The shrine stood quiet again, but not empty. The air within it shimmered faintly, filled with the warmth of a flame that could not be seen but would never fade. The mountain breathed. The wind sang. And somewhere, unseen, a dream continued to bloom. Chapter 5: Rain over moss and stone. The sky had turned a quiet gray. The traveler felt the change before the first drop fell, a deep stillness in the air, as though the forest itself had paused to listen. Then came the rain, soft at first, like the sound of silk brushing across leaves. It gathered strength slowly, until the whole mountain seemed to hum beneath it. The traveler lifted their face to the sky. Cool drops touched their skin, each one a small, perfect weight of the world. The scent of wet earth rose around them, green and alive. the breath of moss and cedar mingling with the mist. They walked on, the path winding through stones glazed with water. The forest had changed its voice, it no longer whispered. It sang. Rain struck the bamboo leaves, creating 1,000 tiny drums. Every sound was soft, yet together they formed a rhythm as deep as the earth. The travelers slowed their pace, listening. Each drop fell in time with their heartbeat. Each step pressed into the wet ground, leaving no trace. Somewhere in the distance, a small stream began to overflow, its clear voice joining the song of rain. The forest became one vast, living instrument, wind and water playing the same endless tune. The traveler breathed with it. For the first time in many days, they felt no need to arrive anywhere. There was only the sound. Only this moment. They came upon a stretch of path covered in moss. The stones were ancient, their edges softened by years of rain and footsteps. The moss glowed a deep emerald, its color richer in the dim light. Droplets gathered upon it, each one catching the faint silver of the sky. The traveler crouched and brushed a hand across the surface. It was cool and velvety, a small softness in a world of stone. The rain deepened, falling now in steady threads. It filled the silence with texture, a woven curtain of sound that made thought itself slow down. The traveler felt their breathing settle into its rhythm. Inhale with the rain's fall. Exhale with its release. They could almost believe that the forest was breathing with them. Time lost meaning. The traveler sat beneath a broad cedar, watching the rain form tiny rivers down the bark. Each droplet found its own path, a small wandering, a quiet return to the earth. They closed their eyes. The world became sound and scent alone. In that drifting stillness, a memory rose like mist. It was not sharp or clear, but soft, like a voice remembered from a dream. A woman's hands wringing out a cloth beside a stream. The smell of rain-soaked rice fields. A child's laughter echoes through wooden halls. Nothing distinct, nothing complete, yet the memory felt like home. The traveler let the images fade, just as they had appeared. Rain had a way of returning things gently, not with force, but with patience. They opened their eyes again, and the forest seemed to shimmer. Every leaf carried a world within its droplets. Every sound was round and whole. They rose, placing one careful step after another upon the slick stones. The sound of their footsteps merged with the rain, and soon, it was impossible to tell which belonged to whom. The path led to a small bridge. It arched over a narrow stream swollen by the rain. Water rushed beneath, dark and quick, its surface scattered with falling drops. The traveler paused in the center of the bridge. They rested their hands upon the damp railing and leaned slightly forward, watching the current move. It was mesmerizing, 1,000 silver circles expanding and vanishing, never repeating, never still. The traveler whispered to themselves, though they did not know why. Everything passes, but nothing truly goes. The rain answered with a soft hiss, like agreement. Across the bridge, the path split. To the left, the stones climbed toward the high ridge. To the right, a trail of moss led into a hollow dense with trees. The traveler followed the right-hand path. The light dimmed quickly. Here, the canopy was thick, and the rain fell through it in thin, luminous threads. The air was cool and sweet. Mist hung low to the ground, wrapping the roots in a silver glow. Now and then, a droplet would fall from a high branch, landing upon the traveler's shoulder like a tiny heartbeat. The rhythm was perfect, unplanned, eternal. In the hollow's center, they found a stone basin half covered with moss. Rainwater had gathered within, clear as glass. The traveler knelt beside it. The surface trembled as new drops fell, creating gentle ripples that overlapped like memories meeting and parting. They dipped their fingers in. The cold startled them awake, yet it was a pleasant kind of wakefulness, one that felt like beginning again. The basin reflected the sky. But as the ripples spread, the reflection changed. For a heartbeat, the traveler saw not their own face, but another, a figure in white robes, standing among trees. Then the image vanished. Only rain remained. The traveler stayed there for a long time, watching the water fill, overflow, and spill silently down the sides of the stone. It reminded them of the shrine of the candlelight flickering beneath the eaves, of the quiet old keeper bowing before the altar. They wondered if she still tended her flame, or if the rain had taken that duty now. The thought brought no sorrow, only peace. Perhaps light and water were never separate. Perhaps prayer and silence were the same. When the rain finally began to ease, a hush settled over the forest. The last drops fell like punctuation, gentle, deliberate, complete. The traveler stood. Their robe clung softly to their skin, heavy with rain, but they felt lighter than before. The moss beneath their feet glistened, alive with new color. From every hollow and leaf, the sound of dripping water formed a delicate symphony, the quiet after-song. A bird called once, hesitant and clear. Then another answered, and soon the air was filled with soft, waking notes. The world was being rewritten in sound. The traveler began to move again. With each step, a faint mist rose from the ground, carrying the scent of wet stone and pine. The forest had been washed clean. Every trunk, every root, every hidden corner gleamed as if newly born. The path curved upward, and through the thinning mist, the traveler glimpsed the outline of a small gate, a torii half covered in moss. They paused before it. The wood was old, its red paint long faded into brown, but the air around it hummed gently, as if some quiet blessing lingered there. The traveler bowed. Rainwater dripped from their hair to the stones below, each drop ringing softly, like the memory of a bell. Beyond the torii, the sky began to clear. A faint silver light spread through the clouds, and the forest exhaled. The mist lifted, revealing the long slope of the mountain stretching into the distance. Everything glistened. Everything breathed. The traveler turned once more toward the trees. "Thank you," they murmured. The words were small, but they carried easily in the damp air. A breeze stirred in answer, a quiet acknowledgement, a continuation. The rain had passed, but its voice remained, woven into the moss, the stone, the rhythm of steps that would one day return. The traveler walked on, each footfall soft, each breath easy. Behind them, the forest shimmered with the memory of rain, 1,000 droplets holding the light, 1,000 moments never to be repeated, and yet never truly gone. The world had changed, gently, completely, as it always does after rain. And in that quiet transformation, the traveler felt the same change within themselves, subtle, invisible, but certain. The mountain, the shrine, the rain, the heart all breathing together, as one long, endless sigh. Chapter 6: The Whispering Stream. The rain had passed, leaving the forest wrapped in silver light. Every leaf shone with a thin skin of water, and each droplet trembled, as if unsure whether to fall or to stay. The traveler followed the sound. It began faintly, a single note, carried through the air, soft and persistent, the voice of moving water. Step by step, the sound grew clearer. The scent of damp stone filled the air, and the soil beneath their feet grew cool and soft. Soon, between curtains of fern and mist, they saw it, a narrow stream winding through the forest floor, its surface alive with light. The stream was not wide, but it moved with purpose, its current dancing around moss-covered rocks and fallen branches. The traveler crouched beside it. They dipped their fingers into the clear flow. The water was cold, a shock at first, then a calm that spread slowly through the skin. The stream spoke, not in words, but in motion, a language of ripples and reflections. The traveler listened. Each swirl, each eddy, seemed to say something old and kind. It was not a song for ears, but for breath. The forest around them still glistened. Sunlight filtered through in soft shafts, touching the stream with trembling light. Tiny insects danced above it, their wings catching the morning glow. The traveler watched in silence. They began to hear not just the stream, but the spaces between its sounds, the pause where meaning lived. They leaned closer. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the wind returned. It came softly, sliding through the bamboo, touching the surface of the water with 1,000 tiny sighs. The stream answered a rising murmur, a low laughter of pebbles and flow. Wind and water met, and for a moment, the world was nothing but their conversation. The traveler could not tell which spoke first. Perhaps it was the wind, saying, "I travel far, but I do not stay." Or perhaps it was the stream, replying, "I stay, but I am never still." The two voices merged, their tones soft, endless, the language of everything that moves and everything that endures. The traveler closed their eyes. They could hear the rhythm within themselves now, breath flowing in and out like the meeting of the two. Wind brushed their hair. Water touched their hand. There was no separation. Time drifted. Mist rose from the stream in slow curls, each wisp catching the sun before fading into the air. The traveler opened their eyes again and saw how the stream reflected the sky, blue and white and moving. The water was not merely clear, it was alive with the memory of clouds. The traveler thought of the shrine, of the candle's smoke twisting upward, of the keeper's gentle voice saying, "You are home." The same wind that had moved that flame was now touching this water. The same breath moved through all things. A small leaf drifted by. It turned slowly, caught on the current, then disappeared downstream. The traveler watched it go. For a moment, they imagined following it, becoming part of the stream, letting the current choose their path. No striving, no thought, only movement. The stream whispered again, and though its words were lost to sound, the traveler felt them in their chest. Everything returns, even the wind. They smiled. The path of the stream wound gently down the mountain. At times it vanished beneath roots and stones, only to reappear, glittering in some unexpected clearing. The traveler followed. They walked slowly, their steps soft upon the wet ground. Now and then, a small bird darted from branch to branch, its feathers shaking off droplets in tiny bursts of light. Farther ahead, the stream widened into a shallow pool. Its surface was smooth, a mirror to the sky. The traveler knelt once more, their reflection rippling in the water. They did not look long, only enough to see how the world folded itself inside their gaze. The wind passed again, this time stronger, carrying the faint sound of bells from far away, perhaps from the shrine, perhaps only from memory. The traveler listened. The sound came and went, threading itself between the murmur of water and the hush of trees. They thought of how the wind could never be seen, yet it shaped everything it touched. And how water, though visible and solid, was never the same from one heartbeat to the next. Together, they formed the balance of the world, the unseen and the ever-changing. The traveler bowed their head. "Thank you," they whispered. Not to anything in particular, but to everything that was listening. The sunlight grew warmer. Mist lifted from the forest floor, revealing small flowers hidden beneath ferns. Their petals were wet and trembling, each drop of water turning into a tiny gem of morning. The traveler sat beside the stream for a long while. They said nothing. They needed no words. The sound of the water spoke for them. Its rhythm slowed the heart, softened the mind. Somewhere deep within the sound, they could almost hear the echo of laughter, not human, but the joy of the world itself. The breeze carried that laughter onward, spreading it through leaves and branches, until the whole forest seemed to hum with contentment. At last, the traveler rose. Their robe brushed against wet grass. Their feet found the path once more. The stream followed beside them for a while, its voice growing softer as the land rose higher. Then, gradually, it slipped away, turning deeper into the forest, its song fading into the distance. The traveler paused. They looked back once, and though the stream was no longer visible, its presence lingered, a quiet pulse beneath the earth. They felt it still, flowing unseen, joining other waters, moving toward the sea. The wind touched their shoulder as they walked on. It seemed to say, "Do not forget the sound you carry." The traveler nodded, though no one saw. The sound was within them now, the whisper of stream and wind intertwined, a lullaby for the road ahead. They took a deep breath. The air was clean, filled with the scent of moss and distant sunlight. Somewhere behind them, the stream continued its endless song, weaving through the forest, carrying the memory of everything it had touched. And the wind, the eternal messenger, lifted that song and carried it higher, until it became the very breath of the mountain. The traveler walked until the sound was gone, but even in silence, it remained a rhythm beneath the heartbeat, a whisper within the stillness. They smiled. "Be still," they murmured again, the words gentle as water. "You are home." The wind sighed once more through the trees, and the forest answered, its voice low and unending, as the traveler moved onward into the light of another morning. Chapter 7: The Fox Beneath the Moon. Night returned softly. The sky deepened, and the forest settled into its familiar hush, the kind of quiet that does not come from absence, but from everything listening at once. The traveler moved along a narrow path, their lantern dim, its flame swaying gently with each breath of wind. The rain of the day had passed into memory, leaving the air cool and sharp. A faint mist drifted low to the ground, and above the trees, the moon rose round, patient and silver. The world was washed clean. Even the stones seemed to glow with a quiet light. The traveler paused, lifting their gaze toward the moon. It hung there like an ancient promise, a slow, eternal heartbeat in the sky. Somewhere nearby, a twig cracked. The traveler turned. The sound was soft, but in the silence, it carried far. At the edge of the clearing, a figure stood among the ferns, small, still, its eyes bright as polished amber. A fox. Its fur was pale, almost white, beneath the moonlight, its tail a soft brush of silver mist. The two watched each other. Neither moved. Neither needed to. The night itself seemed to hold them together, breath to breath, silence to silence. The traveler bowed slightly. "Good evening," they whispered. Their voice barely disturbed the air. Still, the fox's ears twitched, and its eyes softened, as if it understood. Then the fox stepped forward. Its paws made no sound on the damp earth. Each movement was slow, deliberate, as though it were walking through a dream. It stopped a few steps away. The distance between them was filled not with fear, but with quiet curiosity. The traveler lowered their lantern. The flame flickered, reflected in the fox's eyes like twin moons. For a long while, neither of them spoke nor moved. The forest breathed around them. Leaves trembled gently in the wind, and somewhere far away, a stream whispered its endless song. The traveler felt an odd warmth, not from the lantern, but from within. It was the kind of warmth that comes when two silences meet and recognize each other. The fox tilted its head, as though hearing something unseen. Then it stepped closer. The traveler held still. The fox approached until its nose nearly touched the traveler's hand. Its breath was warm and faint, carrying the scent of rain and wild grass. The traveler extended their palms slowly. The fox did not flinch. Their fingers brushed soft fur lighter than air, cool like the shadow of water. The moment lasted only a heartbeat. But in that heartbeat, something passed between them, a wordless knowing. The traveler saw, for just an instant, a vision behind those amber eyes. A shrine hidden deep within the snow. A red torii half buried in frost. A fox was waiting beneath it, watching the moon rise. Then it was gone. The traveler blinked. The forest returned. The fox stepped back, its eyes still bright but distant now, like a reflection seen across a river. Wind moved softly through the clearing. The fox's fur rippled, and its tail brushed against the traveler's robe. The traveler felt the faintest pull, as if the world itself had exhaled. "Are you a spirit of this forest?" they asked quietly. The fox tilted its head again, and though no voice came, the traveler heard an answer within the wind. "I am what remains when stories breathe." The moonlight deepened, spilling silver across the ground. The fox turned away, but paused once at the edge of the clearing. It looked back. In that gaze was no wildness, no distance. Only recognition. The traveler bowed once more, their breath slow, steady. "May your path be gentle," they whispered. The fox's tail flicked lightly, and then it moved graceful, silent, disappearing into the mist like a dream returning to sleep. For a while, the traveler remained where they were. The clearing felt changed, somehow emptier, yet more alive. The wind brushed through the branches again, and the traveler thought they heard faint laughter within. It not mocking, but light, as if the forest itself were smiling. They sat down upon a smooth stone. The lantern's flame dimmed, and moonlight took its place. All around, the forest glowed. Every leaf caught the pale shimmer, every droplet of water turned into glass. It was not night anymore, it was quiet light. The traveler closed their eyes. In the stillness, they could feel the fox's presence lingering, a soft pulse, a movement just beyond sight. They thought of how fleeting the encounter had been, and yet how complete. Some connections did not need words. Some meetings lasted only as long as a breath, yet changed everything after. The wind moved again, and the traveler thought it said, "Nothing truly leaves. It only changes shape." When they opened their eyes, a small white feather rested upon their knee. Not a feather, they realized, a tuft of fur, soft and shimmering faintly in the moonlight. They lifted it gently between their fingers. It was warm for a moment, then cooled, as though it had absorbed the last breath of something divine. The traveler smiled. They tucked the strand carefully into their robe. A keepsake, not of possession, but of remembrance. The moon had climbed higher now, its light turning the forest into a sea of silver. Mist rose again from the ground, curling through roots and branches like smoke. The travelers stood, lifting their lantern. The flame inside had gone out, but it no longer mattered. The moon was enough. They took one slow step, then another, following the faint path that led upward through the trees. Behind them, The clearing remained empty except for the whisper of wind and the memory of amber eyes watching from the dark. As they climbed, the forest opened. From the ridge, the traveler could see the valley below, bathed in moonlight. The stream shimmered like a silver thread. The shrine's roof caught the light in the distance, a quiet star upon the mountain. The traveler breathed deeply, and for the first time, they felt no difference between themselves and the forest. Everything wind, water, fox, and moon moved together, one unbroken breath. They whispered, to the night, to the unseen, "Be well, friend." The words drifted upward, fading into the pale air. The wind rose gently, and for a brief, miraculous moment, the traveler heard a single echoing reply. A faint, clear sound, half laughter, half song, carried from far among the trees. "And you." Then silence. Pure, endless, like sleep. Chapter 8: The Silent Bell. The forest was quiet. Mist hung low among the trees, softening every edge, erasing the distance between one thing and the next. The traveler walked slowly, their steps careful on stones damp with dew. The night had lingered longer than usual, its darkness stretching across the mountains like a velvet cloth. Above, the sky was pale, the first hint of dawn hidden in the folds of mist. Somewhere ahead, the traveler glimpsed a structure through the fog, a bell tower, old and silent, its wood dark and glistening with moisture. The traveler approached. The path narrowed, winding among gnarled roots and moss-covered stones. Each step was deliberate, each breath in rhythm with the quiet world around them. The bell tower rose slowly into view. It had stood there for centuries, yet seemed untouched by time. Its wooden beams were smooth, but the weight of history pressed gently against them. The traveler paused at the foot of the stairs. The mist curled around the base, softening every line, blurring the distinction between earth and structure. They climbed slowly, step by step, the silence thickened until it felt like a living thing, wrapping around their chest and shoulders, breathing with them. At the top, the traveler reached the bell. It was large, cast from dark metal, its surface worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. They raised a hand, to strike it, to hear it ring, but when they tapped, no sound came. Only the faintest vibration, almost imperceptible like a memory of a sound, a shadow of a note. The traveler closed their eyes. In the stillness, something began to emerge. Not sound, but understanding. The bell did not need to ring. Its presence was enough. Its silence spoke. The mist drifted through the tower, wrapping around the traveler like a cool embrace. Every breath was visible, a small cloud in the infinite gray. The traveler felt the weight of centuries, and yet also the lightness of all those who had come before. Every prayer, every wish, every quiet hope for the world, they lingered here, inside the bell, inside the silence. The wind entered the tower, soft, almost imperceptible. It did not shake the bell, but it carried its essence. The traveler felt the vibration within themselves, in their chest, their heart, their very bones. It was not sound. It was resonance. The bell spoke without a voice, and the traveler listened. Time itself seemed to slow. The forest below was hidden in mist. The mountains vanished into soft gray. All that remained was the bell, the traveler, and the breath of the world. The traveler bowed, not to awaken a sound, but to honor what was already there. The bell responded not with tone, but with presence. A wave of peace spread outward, filling the tower, the forest, filling the traveler. They felt their heartbeats slow, their thoughts quiet, their body and mind aligned with the rhythm of the earth. Outside, the mist moved. It twisted gently around the tower, caressing the wood, sliding down the stairs like liquid silver. The traveler sat upon the wooden floor. Their legs folded beneath them. Their hands rested lightly on their knees. They closed their eyes, and in the deep silence, they heard the world breathe. Not in sound, not in wind, but in the subtle vibration of life. Itself the same vibration that had moved through the bamboo, through the streams, through the fox beneath the moon. The bell was part of that breath. Always had been, always would be. The traveler felt a faint warmth in their chest. It spread slowly outward, touching each limb, each finger, each toe, until the body felt as light as the mist surrounding them. They realized something profound. They did not need the bell to ring. Its silence was its song. Its stillness was its prayer. The wind whispered through the open tower, and though it carried no words, the traveler understood. Be still. All that exists is already enough. The traveler exhaled slowly. The exhale was not just air, but a release of every tension, every worry, every step of the journey. They were weightless. They were home. The first light of dawn touched the mist, silver turning to pale gold. The forest below strayed a bird called once, then another answered. The traveler remained seated, breathing in time with the world. The bell was silent, and yet louder than any sound they had ever heard. It spoke of eternity. It spoke of every being who had ever come here. It spoke of all that was, all that is, and all that would ever be. The traveler understood completely, and smiled. They rose slowly, descending the stairs of the bell tower with care. The mist parted gently around them. Each step on the wooden planks was measured, as if they were walking not on earth, but on the memory of the universe itself. Outside, the path led back into the forest. The traveler felt a quiet reverence. Everything, the wind, the moss, the stones, the lingering light, was imbued with the same stillness as the bell. They did not speak. They did not need to. They simply walked, and the world walked with them. Before leaving the clearing, the traveler turned back once. The bell tower stood silent. The mist wrapped it like a gentle cloak. No sound came, yet it was perfect. A presence, not a voice, a song made of absence, a prayer that needed no words. The traveler bowed one last time. "Thank you," they whispered. And the wind carried the words, soft and infinite, into the forest, into the mountains, into the stillness of the world. The traveler continued onward. The mist thinned. Dawn spread fully across the sky, and the forest glimmered with dew and light. The bell remained behind, silent, eternal. Yet the traveler carried its resonance within them, a quiet rhythm to match every heartbeat, a deep calm to meet every breath. And for the first time in a long while, they knew the meaning of being completely still. Home. Chapter 9. The Meadow of Morning Light. The night had receded entirely. Mist dissolved into silver threads of dawn, and the forest released the traveler into open space. Ahead lay a meadow. It was wide and gentle, its grass wet with dew, each blade trembling in the soft morning breeze. The sunlight poured slowly across the slope, golden and patient, spilling warmth over every stone and leaf. The traveler stepped forward. Each footfall was soft upon the wet grass. The air smelled of earth, green things, and the faint sweetness of wildflowers. The breeze moved like a soft hand across their face. It carried whispers of mountain streams, the distant murmur of forest birds, and a faint memory of the fox beneath the moon. The traveler paused. They closed their eyes. The warmth of sunlight mingled with the cool touch of dew, and a deep calm settled into their chest. Everything was alive. Everything was breathing. Everything was waiting without haste. They walked slowly, letting their fingers brush the grass as they moved. The dew collected upon their palms, tiny, liquid jewels that reflected the light. A butterfly rose from a clump of flowers. Its wings caught the sun, flashing soft hues of blue and gold. It hovered briefly, then drifted away, carried by the same invisible wind that moved the traveler's hair. The meadow was silent, yet filled with countless small voices, each one a secret, a ripple, a whisper of life. A small brook meandered through the meadow. Its water was clear as glass, reflecting the sky and clouds above. The traveler knelt beside it. The cold water ran over their hands, and with it, every tension they had carried up the mountain slipped quietly away. The surface shimmered with the morning light, ripples spreading outward endlessly. In the reflection, they saw the forest behind, the bamboo grove, the silent bell, and even the fox's amber eyes all converging into one calm horizon. A soft wind lifted from the valley. It carried with it the scent of flowers, plum, lily, and the delicate sweetness of grasses long untouched. The traveler inhaled deeply. Each breath felt like a blessing, each exhale a release. Time seemed to pause. The sun's light grew warmer, touching every leaf, every stone, every drop of dew. The traveler lay down gently upon the grass. The soft earth supported them completely, cool and yielding beneath their back. The wind moved across the meadow. It rustled the grass like waves on a quiet sea, and the traveler's eyelids began to close. They felt the memory of all they had seen on this journey: the shrine, the bamboo, the fox, the bell, the stream, all flowing together in one gentle current. Each breath aligned with the meadow's rhythm, slow, steady, unbroken. Even the sun seemed to pause in its ascent, watching over them, warm, protective, eternal. Small insects began to stir. A dragonfly hovered near the brook. A faint song of birds rose from the distant trees. The traveler listened, hearing the subtle harmony of life, a soundless music that touched not the ears, but the heart. The morning unfolded like a slow wave. Light expanded, colors deepened, and every droplet of dew became a tiny prism, spilling quiet rainbows across the meadow. They rolled gently onto their side, watching the horizon stretch infinitely. The breeze whispered past their face. The sun warmed their back. The grass cradled them. It was impossible to separate themselves from the world. Everything was connected: stone, water, wind, sun, grass, sky, heart. They did not need to move. They did not need to speak. They did not even need to think. All that existed was enough. The traveler's breathing slowed further, matching the rhythm of the meadow. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. With each breath, a tension dissolved. With each exhale, a new calm rose. The dew, the sunlight, the wind, and the grass all seemed to embrace them, one continuous, gentle heartbeat. The fox, the stream, the silent bell, all were there in memory, woven into the soft light of morning. A single butterfly landed near their hand. It rested briefly, then took off, carried on the same breeze that seemed to sing through the meadow. The traveler smiled, eyes still closed. They felt a soft, unbroken joy, a warmth that needed no explanation. The world was complete. The meadow was complete. They were complete. Sunlight fully touched the horizon now. The mist had lifted completely. Every corner of the meadow gleamed with life. The air was filled with faint scents, gentle movements, and soft light. The traveler felt a deep gratitude for the journey, for the forest, for the wind, the stream, the fox, the bell, and now this meadow. They whispered, almost to themselves, "Thank you for letting me be here. Thank you for letting me rest." The wind carried the words through the meadow, through the trees, over the stones, across the hills, and into the heart of the mountains. They lay quietly until the sun climbed higher, feeling no need to rise. The meadow was their sanctuary, the light their lullaby, the wind their embrace. Everything breathed together, every blade of grass, every drop of dew, every ray of sunlight, and the traveler aligned perfectly with the rhythm of the world. In that moment, nothing existed but calm. Nothing existed but light. Nothing existed but breath. And in that calm, the traveler finally slept. Chapter 10: The Mountain's Last Song. The journey had led the traveler upward, through forests, streams, meadows, and mist. Now, the path opened onto the summit. The wind was different here, not soft like in the bamboo grove, not playful like the fox's night wind, but vast, patient, infinite. The traveler stood at the edge, looking over the mountains stretching endlessly, the valleys folding into one another like waves frozen in time. Sunlight poured from the east, spilling across peaks and ridges, turning stones into gold, and casting the forests below into shades of emerald and silver. The wind whispered through the traveler's hair, and the scent of moss, pine, and wet stone filled the air. It was a chorus of everything they had seen, everything they had touched, everything they had become. The mountain itself seemed to sing. The song was not audible in the way music is. It was deeper, older, infinite. It resonated in the bones, in the heart, in the very breath of the traveler. They closed their eyes. They could hear the wind weaving among the peaks, the streams flowing endlessly downward, the soft, distant laughter of foxes and birds, even the echo of the silent bell in the forest below. Every moment of the journey, the prayers, the streams, the rain, the meadow, the moonlight flowed together into this song. The traveler took a step forward onto the summit. Their feet pressed gently against the stone. They inhaled deeply, feeling the air move through every fiber of their being. The sun's warmth reached their face. The wind lifted their robe and brushed their arms. The mountain exhaled slowly, and the traveler exhaled with it. All was one. All was complete. They remembered the shrine, and the old keeper's quiet words. Nothing kept in kindness is ever lost. They remembered the stream, the fox beneath the moon, the silent bell, the dew-laden meadow. Every step had led here. Every breath had shaped this moment. The traveler bowed slightly, not to the mountain, not to the wind, not to the sun, but to the totality of all that had been witnessed and shared. The wind picked up, carrying 1,000 tiny notes, leaves trembling, water trickling, insects humming, all merging into a single, harmonious vibration. The traveler closed their eyes again. They felt the song move through time, a gentle rise and fall, like the breathing of the world itself. It was the last song of the mountain. A song that had existed before them, that would continue after them, and yet they were part of it. They stretched their arms slightly, letting the wind pass through their fingers. They tilted their head to the sun, letting the warmth sink into their skin. A small bird landed nearby, chirping softly, then took off again, carried by the same wind that had shaped the summit. The traveler smiled. They understood now the journey had not been about arriving. It had been about noticing. It had been about breathing, feeling, being. And now, at the mountain's peak, everything whispered, "You are enough. You are home." The song continued as they sat down on a flat stone. They closed their eyes, letting the summit cradle them, letting the wind, the sun, the mountains, the forests, and the streams become one with their breath. Every inhalation carried memory. Every exhalation returned it to the world. They felt the fox's spirit in the shadows, the bell's resonance in their chest, the stream's clarity in their hands, and the meadow's warmth beneath their body. The mountain's song wrapped around all of it, folding together past, present, and future into a single, endless harmony. Time no longer mattered. The traveler's breath matched the rhythm of the earth. The clouds drifted slowly across the sky. The sunlight shifted, touching everything differently, and each moment became eternal. The wind whispered through the stones. It carried the memory of rain, of mist, of night and day. The traveler let the song move through them completely. Their body felt weightless, their mind empty, their heart full. All that had been seen, all that had been felt, flowed outward into the air, and returned like gentle waves, until the world and the traveler were indistinguishable. The traveler leaned back, letting the wind hold them. They could feel the heartbeat of the mountains beneath, the pulse of the streams below, and the warmth of sunlight pouring over the world. A leaf brushed their hand, and a faint shimmer ran through the air. It was the echo of every step, every pause, every touch of kindness they had offered or received. It was the mountain's last song. And it was theirs. They rested there for a long while, listening, feeling, breathing. The journey had ended. And yet it was not an ending. It was a completion. A quiet culmination of everything. The wind moved once more, smoothing their hair, circling their arms, and carrying the song across peaks and valleys, through forests and meadows, over rivers and stones. The travelers' eyes remained closed. A gentle smile curved their lips. They let themselves dissolve into the rhythm of the world, not as a visitor, not as a seeker, but as a part of everything, as a note in the mountain's eternal song. The sun rose higher, and the first warmth of morning spread across the slopes. The traveler lay still, breathing in sync with the mountain, breathing out into the world. Everything was calm. Everything was perfect. Everything was home. And the mountain sang. Its song is eternal, gentle, complete.